I began working on this sermon while sitting in the waiting room of the intensive care unit. As some of you may have heard, last month my mother-in-law, Alice, underwent a quite complex surgery. And the day after her operation suffered a major stroke. She's been in the ICU ever since, sometimes alert, oftentimes unresponsive. It has been a baffling back and forth of good news and bad, progress and setbacks. Sitting and waiting helplessly in the ICU, there have been times it has all felt dangerously close to a tomb. And I know that many of you, at some time or another, have sat waiting and watching, dangerously close to a tomb. Contemplating the stark reality of our mortality, it strikes me that our job here today is not just to convince one another that Jesus has been raised from the dead. No. The question is not just about the resurrection of Jesus, but about our own. What about the death of our loved one? What about the death of a marriage or a dream? Or any one of the million little paper cuts that add up to immense suffering in our lives that push us dangerously close to a tomb. As horrible and awful and unimaginable as the death of Jesus certainly was, we're not just wondering about him. If we're being honest, we might also be wondering about our own loss of life and those that we love, lingering dangerously close to the tomb. Mary Magdalene was one such soul who dared to linger dangerously close to the tomb. The Gospel of John indicates that as Simon Peter and the other disciple returned to their homes in astonishment, Mary lingered on. She was weeping. Her whole life had hinged on the promise that Jesus had been the one who made her feel fully alive. And now he was gone. Nowhere to be found. But instead of running to and fro and returning home, Mary lingers there at the tomb, dangerously close. Why are you weeping? She hears a voice inquire. I do not know where they have laid him, she responds between sobs. Faced with the impossible questions of suffering and death, confronted with the absence of a loved one, we too ask our endless questions ringing, I do not know. I do not know how we're going to make ends meet. I do not know what's going to happen to my children or my parents or whatever else it is I wish I could control but clearly cannot. I do not know, is a completely understandable response in proximity to the tomb. But do you see what it is that I am talking about? We're not just wondering about the suffering and death of Jesus. We're wondering about our own. We're not just questioning where Jesus is and why the tomb is empty. We today are lingering dangerously close to the tomb. Now, I'm not saying that I've never had questions or doubts or concerns about what the heck is going on in these stories about the resurrection. I have had and still have plenty of debates about what all this means. But I also find that today I am less concerned about what happened then and there and more concerned about what happens here and now. The future implications for those of us who live in the hope of the resurrection. For you and I, like Mary, linger dangerously close to these tombs. We can forgive Mary Magdalene for her confusion, can we not? Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him. I'll take care of it." Have you ever found yourself so exasperated you find yourself saying, "I'll just do it myself"? We'd prefer to take care of it on our own. We can comprehend death or we can comprehend theft. We'll take care of it and just try harder to gather all the broken pieces and somehow try to reassemble them again. But resurrection? Not possible. New life? Do we even dare? That which was dead being restored to something more alive than we can currently comprehend as living? How can it be? A few weeks ago, my theater-loving daughter introduced me to the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical called Hadestown, which was performed last week in Birmingham. Hadestown is a modern retelling of the classical Greek tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice. Now, considering this tale has been told for a few millennia, I think the need for a spoiler alert has passed. So here's the synopsis. The miracle-working musician Orpheus, whose song can bring flowers to bloom, follows his beloved Eurydice all the way down to the domain of Hades. The intensity of his love is channeled through song to convince Hades to let them go, to let them return to the land of the living. In a moment of introspection, the king of the underworld remembers his own longing for love and concedes to let them go, but on one condition. They cannot walk side by side. Eurydice must trail behind, and Orpheus may not look back. One doubtful glimpse behind, and she will be lost to Hades forever. As the legend goes, Orpheus emerges from the tunnel to hell and is overcome with doubt. Desperately, he looks behind to see if his beloved Eurydice is following him up from Hades, and thus loses her forever. The theater, full of thousands, is dead silent. After a long, painful moment of irreversible loss and grief, the narrator, Hermes, states the obvious. This is a tragedy. And then he begins to sing softly, This is a sad song. This is a sad song, but we sing it anyways. You who sang the song of Holy Week, the betrayal, the trial, the suffering, the death of Jesus, know this feeling all too well. And all of us, if we live long enough, we know the pangs of suffering in our own lives. It is a sad song, but we sing it anyways. We sing it in hope that spring will come again. We sing it not just in hope of that first resurrection, but in the hope of all the resurrections that we might dare dream. As St. Paul once wrote to the Romans, "For if we have been united with him in a death like his, we will certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his." All of our tombs are enshrouded in tragedy. It is a sad song, but sadness is not the only song that we sing. For even when we linger dangerously close to the tomb, our burial liturgy proclaims, "For even at the grave we make our song. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia." For even at the grave we make our song. Say it with me. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. My friends, Christ is risen, and so too are you.